Good evening, I'm Rhys Potter.
And I'm Megha.
And you're listening to Bro Radio as we present one of two programmes, allowing you to put your questions to the candidates looking for your vote on July the 4th. As well as listening on Bro Radio this evening, you can also watch this full programme via Bro Radio's social media and YouTube channels.
Over the next hour, we'll be putting questions submitted by you via Bro Radio website directly to the candidates standing in Cardiff South Penarth Constituency. Candidates have not been told the questions in advance of this recording, and they'll be given no more than 1 minute to answer to make sure we get through as many questions you've sent during this programme.
Joining us this evening is Welsh Liberal Democrats candidate Alex Wilson, Wales Green Party candidate Anthony Slaughter, Wales Conservative Party candidate Ellis Smith, Reform UK's candidate Simon Llewellyn, and Labour and Cooperative Party candidate Stephen Doughty. Throughout the programme, I'll be keeping the candidates on track, making sure the questions are answered in no more than a minute so we can get through as many of your questions as possible. Before we start, each candidate will be given 1 minute to set out why you should vote for them and their party on July the 4th. We begin in alphabetical order with Welsh Liberal Democrats candidate Alex Wilson.
Good evening. Yes, my name's Alex Wilson. I'm the Welsh Liberal Democrat parliamentary candidate for Cardiff South Penarth. I live in the constituency, and it was my involvement in the community that I live in, that made me become more involved in politics. I was involved in a number of community projects. Mental health is very close to my heart. And it's working in those community projects. I felt I could do more, try and do more for the community. And I felt that with the support of the Liberal Democrats, and with which were in line with my own beliefs of tolerance and understanding, that I could do more. And I believe we can do more. What I'm seeing on the doorstep and in the constituency is a frustration. I feel that here in Wales we are sandwiched between the arrogance of Westminster, what we're seeing in Westminster, and the arrogance of power.
Okay, thank you, Alex. That's a minute. Sorry, we're going to have to go to the next candidate. Next up is Wales Green Party candidate Anthony Slaughter.
Good evening. I'm Anthony Slaughter, leader of Wales Green Party and your candidate in Cardiff South Penarth. And thank you to the organisers for putting this on. It is so vital and important that we get every opportunity to speak to constituencies. That is at the bottom of our democracy. This is a challenging election, an exciting election, and in some ways an anticlimactic election. Very challenging, the crises we're living in, the cost of living crisis, the growing rampant inequality. People are struggling. After 14 years of Tory cruelty and incompetence and 25 years of Labour complacency here in Wales, Britain is broken. Public services aren't working. The NHS is on its knees. That is the one thing I hear over and over again on the doorstep. But it's just an exciting election because it's our turn to challenge that and to overturn that. And very exciting because we all know the Tories are toast. Rishi Sunak has gone. We know that is the case. And that opens up so many possibilities for people to vote with their heart, with passion, because Labour are going to form the next government. They'll play it down in the next week or two to bolster their vote, but they are going to be the next government. But that is why votes for the Wales Green Party will have
thank you, Anthony.
Policies.
Next up is Welsh Conservative Party candidate Ellis Smith.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity today. My name is Ellis Smith, and I'm standing to be the Cardiff South and Penarth candidate. I was born on 2nd of May 1997, the day Tony Blair came to power. In 1999, the Welsh Assembly government was created. So all my life, all I've known is the Labour Party. And for that, we have longer NHS waiting lists, the worst education PISA results in the UK, higher business rates, and a worse transport system. So on July 4th, I'm fighting to change that and send Vaughan Gething and his Senedd members a message. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ellis. Next up is Welsh Reform UK's candidate, Simon Llewellyn.
Good evening. My name's Simon Llewellyn. I was born and bred in Cardiff in 1971. I'm an ex-military man. I was in the Navy for 11 years, and I've come back to a country where I now see is broken. I typically want to stand up and do something about it. With my military background, I understand what's happening. I'd like to put things in place that we can do. I'd rather stand up and work for you guys in Cardiff South and Penarth, and I read the Reform People's Contract, and it just makes common sense. I sat there and thought, this is the argument I've been putting to my friends and my family for the last 10 years. It is common sense. If you vote for us, we're the only ones that can make real change.
Thank you, Simon. And finally, Labour and Cooperative Party candidate Stephen Doughty.
Well, it's been an honour to serve the people of Cardiff South and Penarth on the old boundaries for the last 12 years, and obviously I'm seeking re-election on the basis of my track record locally, serving and supporting thousands of constituents and working with community organisations and groups across the constituency. Obviously this time taking in new areas, Cateys and Dinas, and I pledge to support them in the way that I have the rest of the constituency were I to be re-elected. But fundamentally this election is about a bigger question. It's about who runs Britain for the next 5 years. And it's time for change. We've had 14 years of chaos under the Conservatives. We've got a positive, ambitious, but also realistic agenda that's been set out by Labour. Investment in our NHS, investment in education, investment in opportunities for our young people, investment in green transition, but all of that on a foundation of economic security and stability instead of the chaos that we've seen, and also security on our streets in a dangerous and uncertain world, security and defence for our country. So it's a chance to vote for change. Very few votes have been cast yet. If you want to see change, you need to vote for it.
Thank you, Stephen. Let's go to Megha for our first question.
Our first question for today. Andrew Paul asks, how do you intend to improve the facilities of our young people? Teenagers need an alternative to the street.
And we'll start with Alex Wilson.
Yes, hi. Children's mental health. We're going through a mental health crisis in this country, and we need to do something about it. They have a whole range of pressures that we never had, with social media pressure, etc. And what we've lost, we've closed down any sort of social outlets that they may have had, social clubs, etc. But we need greater mental health support for our young kids. That includes, I believe, social media restrictions. There's some wonderful organisations working for our children to give them a smartphone-free childhood, and I think that's something I would back, certainly. It's certainly something that I feel that we see the problems with, some of the problems that our young people are experiencing. They don't know how to handle those problems. They lash out, and
Thank you, Alex.
rather than getting to the cause of the problems,
Thank you,
which
Alex.
is their mental health.
And next up, Anthony Slaughter from the Wales Green Party.
Thank you for the question, Andrew. It's really refreshing to start the question from a young person, because those voices need to be heard. I referred to the 14 years of austerity and Tory cuts. Services for young people, like other services, have been cut to the bone. These kids have nowhere else to go. They're lacking basic facilities. We've got a bold programme of investment in communities to rectify that. But we've also got to look at how they're vilified and how they're blamed for things. Young people so often take the blame for so many problems in society that aren't their fault, and we need to get them engaged. We need their engagement in politics. I've really welcomed the introduction of votes at 16 for the Senedd in Wales. That's a step forward. I would like to see votes at 16 in every election. I'd like to see 16-year-olds being able to stand for election. I want us to engage with young people, listen to young people and hear young people, not talk for them.
Thank you. And next we go to Ellis Smith from the Wales Conservative Party.
Thank you for the question. So I believe one of the best tools to solve this is through education. As I mentioned in my opening statement, Wales ranks lowest on the PISA rankings and some of the worst in Western Europe. So I'm calling on the Welsh Government to use the £1.20 they get for every £1 spent on education in England wisely. Use the full amount to support our kids and their education in the future. I'd also, if I was elected, like to invest in youth engagement programmes, working with charities and local businesses to support young people. I think by doing this, by working together within the constituency, we really can make a difference to children's lives.
Thank you, Ellis. Next up, we have Reform UK candidate Simon Llewellyn.
Thanks, Al. Children's our future is as simple as that. And it sounds quite cliche, but it's not. We'd like to put in place a choice for mum and dads to stay at home. I do believe that parenting for children is what you instill on your values and principles on your child for them to move forward in the big wide world. So if we can get them staying at home to teach them how to act, how discipline, working properly. I mean, there's children going to school now in nappies. It's crazy. There should be a policy for that we shouldn't send, or the parents should teach the child how to use a potty or potty train before they go to school. Mental health is a big issue as well. It's I suffer myself with family members who have had mental health issues, and I think a lot of it is to do with some of the pressures they've been given as younglings, under 16 years old, exposure to various things in this world that no children should really have to live with. I like the point of smartphones. Have a child-friendly smartphone with apps, so they can't be exposed to a lot of these nasty things that are away.
And finally, we go to Stephen Doughty from the Labour Party.
Well, it's a great question. My dad was a local youth worker and involved in youth and community work for many years, and I myself was a Cub and Scout leader, and I've had the privilege to work with many fantastic organisations in Cardiff South and Penarth, from our boxing clubs to cadet forces to organisations. I was hearing about the fantastic work the YMCA does, sports clubs. There are a lot of great organisations locally that are doing a lot to provide for young people, and we're lucky that we still have some youth services here, as opposed to some of the cuts that we've seen elsewhere in England where they've been completely decimated. But we do have significant challenges. It's been rightly raised about the challenges of mental health, particularly post the pandemic, the impact of social media. But I'm proud of what we've done in schools here. I'm not going to run down what we've done in education. We've turned around failing schools. We've invested in new school buildings. We've got a brand new further education college building in the heart of the constituency, Cardiff and Vale College. So I'm proud about what our teachers are doing, what our learners are doing, and what our youth and community workers are doing, and I'm optimistic about the future, but we've got to put the young people at the heart of our plans. Thank you, Stephen.
Following recent boundary changes, the areas covered by Cardiff South and Penarth will change from this election. The constituency now gains the ward of Dinas Powys from the Vale of Glamorgan and loses Llanrumney, Rumney and Trowbridge to Cardiff East, which leads on to our next question from Heather.
On to our second question. Heather asks, the constituency covers a wide range of areas. I would be keen to know how you plan to make sure you adequately represent each area. As a part of your constituency, especially if you are not living or constantly in the local community, and how you might balance the different needs of the communities you represent.
Starting again with Liberal Democrat candidate Alex.
Yes, aye. Yes, it is quite a diverse community. I think the problems that we can look at, that we have to think about, not only across this ward but many areas of Wales, particularly, is that one in three children in this country are in poverty. Now, I don't know how that's happened. But that's where we need to start. I've been listening about child support this evening and the wonderful work that's done in our communities and some through councils. But often their parents can't get their child support because they can't afford the petrol to get them to that support. We need to remove the 2-child cap on benefits. Get people out of poverty. That's where the start is. People are suffering. People can't pay for food, they can't pay for petrol, they can't get to work. Let's give people a real living wage, and let's support these people in these communities and support, again, it comes back to mental health as well.
Thank you, Alex. And next up, Anthony Slaughter from the Wales Green Party.
It's a good question. It's a complex constituency with a wide range of communities. And I think that's something to celebrate in the first place. And speaking as myself, I live in Penarth, so I'm very familiar with that community. I've worked with the people of Dinas Powys on local environmental campaigns. I'm campaigning in Grangetown quite a lot with the community there on the Gaza situation in Gaza. So it's important to have a sense of all the different issues that are affecting. Different areas are affected differently. But that's why I'm really proud of the policies we put forward, because we see the problems as interlinked and as a whole. So the problems and solutions we put forward take into account the problems of rural communities as well as urban communities. We speak to farmers at NFU. We offer a wide policy range that offers radical hope and change to all those different communities. And I want to just work more and more with that diversity and celebrate it.
Thank you. And next up we have Wales Conservative Party candidate Ellis Smith.
Well, it's an important question, and I think we need to recognise that different parts of the constituency are going to need a different plan. You can't just have a one-size-fits-all approach, and that's why when I've been speaking to residents and on one of my leaflets, I've committed to holding advice surgeries every single Friday, and that would be in all corners of the constituency to make sure I reach as many people and many different communities as possible. I think that's important because the constituents are the ones who actually pay my wages. They're my boss if I were to be elected. And without listening to them, I'm not going to know what each one needs for each different area. So I'm committed to getting around the constituency as often as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellis. Next up we have Simon Llewellyn from Reform UK.
It's very simple. They're our constituents. We are their voice in Parliament should we get there. So we need to hit the boots on the ground. find out what they're talking about and be their voice in Parliament. As I said, it's a very diverse area, which is exciting. I spent Sunday for a few hours and had lunch in the Sikh temple last weekend. This weekend I'm with the Hindu temple. A great bunch of people, but you've just got to get down onto boots to the ground, speak to them, find out exactly what they want, and try and work a plan with them. See what they want, and then put that plan together for them, and go back to them with that plan and say, is this what you'd like it to look like? We can integrate the different communities together as they do. I spoke to Dr. Singh at the weekend, and he was talking about Muslims, talking about Sikhs, talking about all sorts of different cultures and races, and they all want to work together. It's our community. It's very, very simple. Let's get together and pull things together to make it work for them.
Thank you, Simon. And finally, we have Labour and Cooperative Party candidate Stephen Doughty.
Well, I was born and brought up in Cardiff and the Vale. I've lived in different parts of the constituency, as have members of my family, and I'm really proud of our diversity. I think it's our strength. We do have one of the most economically, socially, religiously, ethnically diverse constituencies, certainly in Wales, and one of them in the UK. And I think that certainly is part of our strength, and their communities that have always lived and loved and enjoyed their lives alongside one another. It doesn't mean we don't have challenges, but I also believe that also brings unique opportunities, and I'm proud of the work I've done in bringing together communities at times of difficulty, and also of working with organisations to listen to their concerns and respond to them. I've held regular surgeries around the constituency. I engage actively on social media. During the COVID pandemic, I did live question and answer sessions for 75 days with constituents at a time that I think was really frightening and scary for a lot of people, and I was scared and frightened too, and I wanted to share that with people, answer their concerns and try and get them the answers. So I think that was testament to the type of approach I've taken, and the approach I've taken to the new areas of the constituency too.
Thank you, Stephen. And our next question.
On to a third question. Donald Sargent asks, as the country is almost bankrupt, how are you going to pay for all your promises without raising taxes?
And we're going to start this question with Welsh Conservative Party candidate Ellis Smith.
The way we do it is by growing the economy. The Prime Minister has already cut national insurance twice. He's committed to looking at abolishing it altogether. So that's more money in working people's pockets, which allows them to spend, which helps grow the economy. By sticking to the plan, Rishi Sunak has got inflation down to around 2%. Our economy is already growing faster than Italy and Germany, and since 2010 has had the joint highest G7 growth in the entire G7. So stick to the plan. I believe in the Prime Minister's plan's working, and I believe that better days are ahead.
Thank you, Ellis. Next, we go to Simon Llewellyn from Reform UK.
Thank you very much. Well, let's face it, as Nigel Farage says, this is the immigration election. So we're committed to freeze immigration for now, sort it out, put policies and plans in place. There's 17,000 people in this country at the moment running around, and we don't know where they are, what jobs they're doing. So that's going to save $5 billion a year just by orchestrating that and saving what's happening at the moment and stopping illegal immigration. The bigger thing is paying the banks interest on the quantitative easing. That's another £35 billion pounds a year savings. Energy savings, tax subsidies, scrap those. Cut foreign aid in half. I mean, why are we giving money to India when they've got a space program? It just doesn't make any sense. And civil service, it's too heavily loaded, the civil service. We need to save £5 in every 100, and that will be a directive to every part of the civil service, is to look at you, whenever you spend £100, you must save £5 of that £100. That's going to give us £50 billion a year extra. There's many, many more subsidies.
Thank you, Simon.
Okay,
next, we go to Anthony Slaughter from the Wales Green Party.
There's a big elephant in the room here, isn't there, that everyone's avoiding, and there's this magical talk of growth. We know our manifesto recognises the severity of the challenges, just how broken the NHS is, how urgent the climate and nature crisis is, and we have bold, ambitious plans to spend the money that's needed to do that. And to answer your question, we are going to do that by raising tax. Very, very specific tax plans. We plan to introduce a wealth tax on multimillionaires and billionaires, a modest increase of 1% on people with wealth over 10 million, and rising up to 2% on $1 billion, would raise 50 to 70 billion in the lifetime of the next Parliament, which would go a long way towards tackling these issues. We cannot pretend there's a magic money tree. We cannot pretend this mythical idea, and it just disappoints me to hear people blaming immigrants. Migrants offer so much to this economy. They work, they pay taxes. Vilifying them is not the way to go.
Not vilifying them, they're illegal.
Sorry, no one interrupted you. But as well as the wealth tax, we have plans for a carbon tax, so polluters pay more as we phase out fossil fuels. We also have a plan to lift the artificial cap on national insurance payments, which means the wealthier people do not pay the same share. All of these things are fully costed in our manifesto.
Thank you, Anthony. And next we go to Stephen Doughty from the Labour and Cooperative Party.
Well, our manifesto contains a very clear tax lock, which is a clear commitment that we are not going to increase national insurance, income tax or VAT. Every single thing in our manifesto is fully funded and fully costed through the tax loopholes, for example, that we would close, the removing the tax breaks that the private schools get, and of course the windfall tax that we said that we put on the oil and gas utilities, for example, oil and gas industry, for example, huge profits they've been making, invest that instead in green transition, green jobs and bringing down bills for our constituents. And if you contrast that with what the Conservatives have put forward, need I say, think of Liz Truss and what happened after her disastrous unfunded mini budget, the consequences that had for all of us in what we paid, and yet they've done it again. £71 billion of promises so far, they're going to mean higher taxes, higher borrowing and higher mortgages for everybody in the country. So I would say judge the Conservative Party by their record. We've made very clear commitments on how we're going to pay for everything going forward. Economic stability will be the rock on which we invest, as I said, in health, education, green transition and opportunities for everybody.
Thank you, Stephen. Finally, we go to Alex Wilson from the Lib Dems.
Yes, I think, yes, we do need to get Wales moving. We need to unlock the potential of Welsh businesses through reforming business rates. We need to bring down trade barriers. And we need to help businesses access capital funding for them to be able to expand. I believe we need to, and the Lib Dems believe we need to improve our trading relationships with the European Union. And we're backing up a proper industrial strategy based upon investment and green jobs. We have to have a plan for the future, and we need to real investment on green projects. And we certainly support a proper windfall tax on the profits made by the oil and on gas producers.
Thank you, Alex. Our next question.
Our fourth question. Caroline Williams asks, for the first time in my life, I don't know who to vote for, and I'm trying to decide. I would like to ask the candidates their views on climate and the environment. What are their priorities in reversing the negative impacts of humans on the planet?
We're going to start with Stephen Doughty from the Labour and Cooperative Party.
Well, we put this at the heart of our manifesto. We do face a climate and a nature emergency that's having devastating impacts not only here in the UK but also globally. It's going to have devastating impacts on generations to come. But at the same time, we have constituents who are struggling to pay their energy bills, and we're not making the most of the huge opportunities that we'd have here in Wales for renewable energy, for example, on and offshore wind. So we put a green investment plan at the heart of what we are going to do. We've explained how we're going to fund it, and it's everything from investing in our port infrastructure for that green transition, in green steel, in insulating Britain, a whole series of policies I think that would make a huge difference. Bringing down our climate emissions, ensuring that we're developing the green jobs and opportunities of the future, and also bringing down people's bills so that we're not reliant on tyrants like Putin for our energy in the future, because we know what an uncertain world we live in. So I think we can get into a virtuous circle here, one which benefits the planet, one which benefits people, and one which benefits the country as a whole.
Thank you, Stephen. Next, we go to Simon Llewellyn from Reform UK.
Okay, net zero is pushing up bills. It's damaging infrastructure. Offshore wind farms. I used to work in that industry. I know what it's all about. Now, it costs more to build than they actually produce. They're about 26% efficient, these wind farms. We're just not going to make it in time. We need cleaner energy technology. Now, we need to look at more recycling. We're never going to reach the CO2 targets that have been set at the moment. Renewable energy has subsidies as well. That's £10 billion a year has been subsidised to build these things. Yes, they're a great idea, but in real fact, they're not working properly. Not yet. We haven't reached that technology yet to make it a real prospect to move forward. Now, we are going to work there. I had a conversation with somebody earlier. Start now, complete later. That does work, but nuclear at the moment is proven. I'm an ex-nuclear submariner, and I know how this works. There is cleaner the repercussions and cleaner energy to be done. So nuclear for now is build what we've got, know what we've got, but scrap subsidies are going on with at the minute because they're just not working. It's not taking effect.
Thank you, Simon. Next, we go to Ellis Smith from the Welsh Conservative Party.
Well, it's a big concern, one concern of many constituents, but we've already reduced emissions by 53% under this Conservative government. And Rishi Sunak has committed to reaching net zero, but reaching it in a way that's not going to affect everyday customers, everyday people. And by being honest and scaling back only some of the measures, our bills are not going to increase as fast, and we can do a just transition into investing into new technologies like nuclear that will secure our future, and like Stephen said, so we stop relying on people like Putin.
Thank you, Ellis. Next, we go to Anthony Slaughter from the Wales Green Party.
Well, Rishi Sunak can commit to all sorts of things, can't he? Because he's not going to be in government. We're the only party with bold, radical plans to hit net zero by 2040. 2050 is already too late and too unambitious. And the one thing I would say is the science is not negotiable. To pretend that we can fiddle with the numbers, we don't have to reduce carbon emissions at the rate that's required, is a danger and is a betrayal of future generations. We have the bold, ambitious plans to retrofit every home in the UK, bringing down people's energy bills, reducing carbon emissions, providing cheap, reliable, if not free, public transport, reducing people's reliance on cars. All of these problems tackle the climate crisis and also tackle the cost of living crisis, making people's lives better. And you have to, nuclear always... Talking of nuclear as the future is farcical. It would take 10 years to get a nuclear power station up and running now, and they never do that on time. The amount of carbon that is used to create a nuclear power station means it would be a very, very long time. They don't normally last more than 10 years. It'd be a very, very long time before they were carbon neutral. So we have to take that false idea off the table.
Thank you, Anthony. And finally, we go to Alex Wilson from the Welsh Liberal Democrats.
Yes, we have a realistic target of net zero by 2045. And we want to accelerate the development of renewable energy, renewable power. And we want to support projects such as the Celtic Sea Wind Farm and the Swansea Tidal Lagoon. It's said that some of the technology isn't there. We need to invest in that technology. The world's on fire. We need to act now, and we need to act quickly. We need to do projects like insulating our ageing housing stock here in Wales. That twofold. It saves energy and reduces fuel bills and helps families. Simple actions can be done. It just needs some joined up thinking and some investment and really investing in the future.
Thank you, Alex. Our next question.
On to our fifth question. Roger asks, what benefits has Brexit brought to the Cardiff, Vale of Glamorgan and to Wales?
We begin with Alex Wilson from the Welsh Liberal Democrats.
What benefits? Well, that's an interesting one. Obviously, Liberal Democrats, we were very strong Remainers. We feel that we're better within the European Union. Our plan is we're the only party to commit to looking at rejoining the European Union. I think we're stronger together. You're asking me what the benefits are. Perhaps some other people down the panel can enlighten me on that. I'm not seeing too many, and I'm not hearing too many on the doorstep. I was talking to the chairman of Chamber of Commerce for Wales, and we're struggling. There's still red tape. There was never a plan in place for when we came out. So, the hospitality sector, all our industry, particularly in Wales, are struggling. So what are the benefits? I'm sorry, I can't name too many.
Thank you, Alex. And next we go to Anthony Slaughter from the Green Party.
I'd just like to state that Wales Green Party policy is to rejoin the EU at a time when it is right. So there are more than one party that do have that policy. I'd say it's an understandable mistake. The benefits of Brexit, I can answer this one in 1 minute because there were none. And it's that's the elephant in the room when people are talking about growing the economy. One major thing that is holding the economy back is the way that we trashed those trading relationships with our closest neighbours. So Green Party would like to see us join the customs union as soon as possible, start trading again. Obviously, it's a long way off rejoining the EU, but we have to strengthen those bonds. It was just pitiful and mind-boggling, really, to see when the EU started to talk about a scheme allowing young people, allowing students, free travel across Europe. Both the Conservative government and Labour opposition said, no, we rule that out. That is a betrayal of future. It's so short-sighted. We talk to people, and I talk to people in the agricultural sector a lot, and they know that they were sold a lie. They are very, very angry about this. So in short, there are no benefits and a lot of damage to be unpicked.
Next, we go to Ellis Smith from the Welsh Conservatives.
So personally, I voted Remain, but I recognise it was a democratic vote, and the benefits of Brexit to me is that we are now able to make our own laws. We are able to make new trade deals with nations across the entire globe, not just within the EU, and we can still make trade deals with the EU. And we're backing the voters because that's what they delivered. Now we make laws on our environment. It means we can take a more measured approach, and we're growing faster than the Eurozone. So I think there are lots of benefits of Brexit, and you have to realise that once Brexit happened, we went into a pandemic and then a war in Europe. But in the future, Brexit will pay more dividends.
Thank you, Ellis. Next, we go to Simon Llewellyn from Reform UK.
It's very simple as far as I'm concerned from where I sit. Brexit just hasn't happened. Reform will do what the Tories have failed to do, and we'll take the huge opportunities that Brexit gives. I'm not sure if you're aware, but we're still under laws of EU, 6,700 laws that we still have to follow by and rule with in this country. Britain's armed forces are blindly being told by politicians marching towards a central European force. It just can't happen. What would happen if we had disagreement with another country if we don't have any armed forces together? That's just crazy in itself. We need to renegotiate and get around the table with the EU to get rid of these laws. Put mutually beneficial laws between us so we can govern our own country. We can take control of our own borders, money and laws.
Thank you, Simon. And finally, we go to Stephen Doughty from the Labour Party.
Well, look, we're 8 years on from the Brexit referendum, and I think it's crucially important that we don't look back, we instead look forward, and that we're very clear about having a constructive and responsible and developing relationship with our friends and neighbours in the EU and also across Europe, not just in the EU. And I think there are a whole series of things that we can do to improve the relationship, to undo some of the damage of the Tories' botched Brexit deal. Firstly, we can start with an EU-UK security pact to deal with the very real threats and challenges that we face, and that's security in its broadest sense, cooperation in a range of sectors, and looking at issues like energy security and supply chains, all the things that we affect, cross-border crime, many other issues. We need to get a deal on agriculture and veterinary standards. It's possible to do it. We've seen some progress in relation to Northern Ireland. That could be a huge benefit to those sectors. And of course, big issue locally, our creative industries. Can we get a better deal, for example, for touring musicians and our creative industries in Europe? So I think there's an awful lot that we can do, but let's be positive, let's look forward, and let's have a constructive relationship with our European partners.
Thank you, Stephen.
Our next question submitted. Some areas of the constituency face higher rates of child poverty than in the UK averagely. Will you commit to advocating for child poverty strategies that will give children the help that they need, starting with the removal of the unfair two-child limit and benefit cap, which punishes children for having siblings?
We'll begin with Alex Wilson.
Yes, well, we have asked and we are committed to removing the two-child benefit. As I mentioned earlier, 1 in 3 children in this country live in poverty. I'm embarrassed by that. We need to do something about that. It's a fundamental right that all children shouldn't be growing up in poverty. We need to do something to lift them out of that. And we need to incorporate the UN Convention on Rights for Children and UK law, setting up an independent advisory body for children's safety online. That's really important as well. Supporting mental health in children, mental health across the board. A lot of families struggle. Many can't work because of mental health issues. They aren't getting the support. They aren't getting social care issues. We need to help people to get back into work, and that will raise us hopefully out of this poverty cycle of poverty.
Next, we go to Anthony Slaughter from the Green Party.
Thank you. Yes, it is an absolute disgrace, and it still shocks me every election when this statistic comes around. 1 in 3 people living in poverty in supposedly the 6th richest nation in the world. We have an absolute manifesto commitment to lifting the cruel two-child benefit cap. That should never have been brought in, and it saddens me to see the two main parties refusing to contemplate that. We also have policies like we would uplift the universal basic credit by £40 a week. We had to introduce a minimum wage of £15 an hour for everyone over 16. It wouldn't be age discriminatory. We would introduce protection for renters. So many people are living in very precarious situations. We would have rent caps and end all no-fault evictions. Our programme of mass retrofitting all homes would reduce energy bills massively for everybody, especially those in the more vulnerable communities. We would bring in better work protection, end the gig economy. There are all these things. This situation has arisen because of political decisions. If the right political decisions are made, if the right political will is there, those children don't have to live in poverty.
Thank you, Anthony. Next we go to Ellis Smith from the Conservatives.
Well, like I'm sure all candidates, I want to see child poverty not only reduced but eradicated. And you see in Conservative-run England, the childcare has been expanded. It's a lot more generous than it is here in Labour-run Wales. So working parents can go back to work to provide for their families, whereas here in Wales it's lacking. And Wales has the highest child poverty rates in the UK. That's Labour. That's Labour. Whereas Conservative-run England, education is better, childcare is better, healthcare is better. All of these things can help reduce child poverty. And I admit there's a lot more we can do. But the Prime Minister is committed to stopping child poverty.
Simon Llewellyn from Reform.
Putting families first is Britain's future depending on our young people. As I said before, these younglings are going to grow up to be in a position where we are at the moment. Reform is going to support marriage. There's going to be a cap on taxes for either spouse for 25% up to £25,000 per year. Hopefully that will then give back to the families what they need for the children. We're going to lift this two-person cap. That's just not working. And on top of that, we need to review the systems to help families more cope within the governance than what we have at the moment. It's all about giving them more disposable income so the children are not in poverty. It's a shame that we're in a country where there is even poverty mentioned when it comes to children. So that's what Reform we're going to do, is putting families first.
Thank you, Simon. And finally, Stephen Doughty.
Well, look, child poverty is unacceptable. I meet families every week who are struggling to make ends meet, and I've met many on the doorsteps during this campaign. The Labour Party should be judged on its record in government. Last time, we nearly eradicated child poverty, brought millions of people out through a range of different measures in health, in education, in the economy. And fundamentally, if you don't get a stable economy, you don't deal with inflation, you don't deal with spiralling rent and mortgage rates, you don't deal with spiralling energy costs, as we've seen under the Conservatives, then those are the fundamentals that are driving families and indeed the children in them into poverty. And we're very clear we're going to inherit a very difficult economic situation. We can't be making unfunded promises that we can't keep. That would be the very worst thing to do for the stability of the economy. But, you know, child poverty will be absolutely a crucial factor, and it's certainly one of the issues that I take most seriously in my role locally in this constituency.
Thank you, Stephen.
On to the next question. Michael even asks, would you rebel against your party line if it was clear that the party's policy was contrary to the wishes of the voters in the Vale and not in their best interests? Or will the party whip always come first?
So first we go to Alex Wilson from the Liberal Democrats.
Well, that's a very interesting question, isn't it? I mentioned earlier, I feel we're sandwiched here in Wales. We're seeing arrogance in Westminster with the betting, and we're seeing arrogance here also in Wales with Vaughan Gethin accepting £200,000 from a company who committed environmental crimes. But this needs calling out. We keep following the party line. We're talking about giving 16-year-olds the vote. Let's give them somebody to vote for. How are we inspiring our young people coming through when we're supposed to be holding looking to our politicians for guidance and morality, and all we seem to be doing is holding them to account? We do have to call it out. If we feel there's something wrong, whether it's in the party or not, we've got to call it out for the good of the future of democracy in this country, or those people coming through in our communities that want a stronger community are going to be put off by...
Next we go to Anthony Slaughter from the Green Party.
There's a big discussion to have about standards in public life and politics, and I hope there's a question about that, but I believe the question was about obeying, following the party whip if it goes contrary to your constituency's needs. I can answer that one quite quickly because the Green Party does not have a whip system. Green MPs, Green councillors aren't whipped. They vote with their conscience on the issue as it faces them, obviously in conjunction with colleagues, and we make policy at conference, but when it comes down to an issue, that Green Party MP will vote with their conscience and in the interest of their constituents.
Thank you, Anthony. Ellis Smith from the Conservatives.
So for me, it's country before party. So the short answer is yes.
Thank you, Ellis. Simon Llewellyn from Reform.
It's quite simple. It's called integrity. I've already been listening to guys on the street, our constituents, from what they tell me, and my message to them is, I'm here to listen to you because I'm your voice in Parliament, should I get in there. It's crazy what's going on at the minute. There isn't any leaders. I'm looking and seeing very intelligent men, and all they seem to do is bicker at each other. And I'm fed up watching the bickering. I want to just use that energy to focus on what's wrong, what the constituents are telling us, and go and act upon it. Put a plan in place with them, like I've said before, and act to really make sure that we're doing what we say we're doing on the tin. It's their constituency. It's our constituents. It's for us to do what they will, and that's what we aim to do.
Thank you, Simon. And Stephen Doughty from the Labour Party.
Well, I've always done my best to speak up for constituents' interests and to represent them in Parliament as best to my ability as I can. My own voting record speaks for itself. But you do accept collective responsibility. For example, if you take a front bench position, as I have done for the last couple of years, and you achieve more together as a team than you do alone. And part of that involves also expressing your views in different ways and being part of a debate and a discussion. Labour is a democratic party. We have vibrant debates and discussions in our own conference and our own party and our own movement about a whole series of issues. Of course, you get free votes on some matters of conscience as well. So I always try and put my constituents first and represent their views. And I also believe that you achieve more together as a team and you can do more for your community and your country.
Thank you, Stephen.
On to the next question. In what ways do you propose to improve the collaboration between UK and the Welsh governments to ensure the unique needs and priorities of Wales are met?
First, we go to Alex Wilson from the Lib Dems.
Yes, it's all about, I believe, working together. I was talking to as I mentioned earlier, the chairman of the Chamber of Commerce for Wales, and he found this bigger frustration that there was no joined-up thinking, certainly between Westminster and Wales. And we need to break down these barriers, these party barriers as well, if we're going to get the country moving. So I think open discussions about how we can move forward for the best for the country.
Thank you, Alex. Anthony Slaughter from the Green Party.
It's a massive problem and it needs resolving. Wales Green Party is a party that believes ultimately Wales should be an independent nation, but that is some way off, and we would like to see improved relations on that journey. And one of the pushbacks from Brexit, one of the results of Brexit, was a power grab from Westminster. We saw the Conservative government taking back powers from Wales and Scotland that were devolved. We saw them trying to neutralise the devolution settlements, and that is why we need a robust, firm constitution for Wales. And we need, I think what's missing is respect, and there's respect missing from Westminster for the Welsh government, Welsh institution, the Welsh Senedd. And we see Wales Green Party has a policy of devolution of police, calling for instant devolution of policing and justice, as does the Welsh Labour Party. Yet we see the Shadow Secretary of State for Wales in Westminster, Jo Stevens, laughing, dismissing that on television, dismissing her own colleagues' policy. So we need a strong constitution in Wales, but we need a strong constitution for the UK, because when we talk about independence for Wales, what we're really talking about is how the four nations of the United Kingdom work together for the good of all inhabitants of all four nations in the future.
Thank you, Anthony. Ellis Smith from the Conservatives.
Well, I already think the Prime Minister has already gone some way to fixing those relationships than his predecessor. I think Mark Drakeford's already on record as saying the relations have improved significantly. Having phoned him on his first day when he was elected to Prime Minister. And I just think it's about building on that for the future, and I think all politicians need to realise that it's the country that benefits when they work together. So that's what I would like to see.
Thank you, Ellis. Simon Llewellyn from Reform.
For me, it's very simple. The slogan for the Royal Navy is "the team works." So to be a team, you have to work together. You have to talk together, meet together, discuss the issues, debate the issues, and try to do the best for the people, which isn't happening at the moment, because what you're finding is it's this bickering again, that we're not doing it because Labour says they're doing it, or we're not doing it because Conservatives says not to do it. It's rubbish. We're here to serve the people, so therefore we need to sit down in a room, discuss what's needed for all of these policies that we've got in front of us, for all of the constituents in our constituencies, and bring ourselves together and work to the better of intelligent people coming together to make things work.
Thank you, Simon. And finally, Stephen Doughty from Labour.
Well, fundamentally, Labour is the party of devolution, and we brought about devolution in Wales, historic decision. And I think you would see a hugely positive and optimistic relationship if you had a UK Labour government working hand in hand with one here in Wales. And I think that would be to the benefit of everybody, because I think, unfortunately, we have seen a more adversarial relationship in recent years. We've seen, things end up in court cases instead of agreement and working a way forward. We've seen the Tories power grab over the structural funds after we left the EU. We would return the decision-making on those to Wales. We're also committed to devolving employment support, exploring the devolution of youth justice and probation. I want to see a new Council of the Nations and the regions, and we want to see a fiscal framework that works for Wales. And I think, a clear area where we could work together is on steel. The UK Prime Minister has failed to get involved in the steel crisis we faced in South Wales and Port Talbot. Just a couple of weeks ago, I was down with the unions, with our Shadow Business Secretary, with our Economy Minister here in Wales, meeting to try and put forward a proactive solution to save steelmaking here in South Wales.
Thank you, Stephen. And as we mentioned earlier this evening, Cardiff South and Penarth is a wide-ranging constituency. So our final question is about what makes that constituency special.
Our final question. Andrea asks, what do you think the Cardiff South and Penarth area has to offer, and how will you promote this in the Parliament?
We'll start first with Ellis Smith from the Conservative Party.
So we kind of touched on it earlier. It's one of the most diverse constituencies in Wales. I think that's what makes Cardiff South and Penarth so great. And the way you promote that in Parliament is just keep banging the drum. Everything that's great, every event that happens, try your best to stand up in Parliament and shout from the rooftops, because that's what Cardiff South and Penarth deserves. It deserves to be put on the map.
Thank you. Anthony Slaughter from the Green Party.
I think it is, as I said earlier, is that diversity of cultures, diversity of communities is a strength, is a real positive for this constituency. And I see it as an example, as a pointing the way forward to what a cosmopolitan, forward-looking, welcoming, independent Wales could look like. It is very much the strength of the constituency. Also, I'm always very impressed by the passion and commitment of young campaigners and activists out there on the streets of Cardiff and in the Vale, fighting social justice and climate justice issues. It is always so inspiring. And one thing, I'm sure Stephen will agree with me, we were both there on the weekend, Pride Cymru just showed you Cardiff at its best. Communities celebrating love and working together.
Thank you, Anthony. We go to Stephen Downs.
Yeah, I mean, I'm incredibly proud of this area and incredibly proud of what it's got to offer the world. And I spoke in my maiden speech in Parliament when I was elected 12 years ago about how we turned from the coal and steel capital of the world, price of coal being set in Cardiff, fueling industry, fueling economy, fueling trade, to one that now brings world-beating creative industries to the world. Doctor Who sold all over the world, amazing TV and film production, world-beating universities that are doing incredible research in semiconductors and biotechnology, and climate change responses, a steel industry that's fueling our new nuclear industry, our major construction infrastructure projects. We've got beautiful constituency, one that's diverse. I think its strength as it is in its diversity, and I think Anthony was absolutely right to say, Pride, for example, are different religious communities working alongside one another. That's what makes this constituency great, and I think it's what it can bring to the world as an example.
Thank you, Stephen. Next we go to Next we go to Alex Wilson from the Liberal Democrats.
Quite simply, for me, it's the people in Cardiff South and Penarth. Such a wide range of people from all corners of the world just make it one of the most colourful constituencies to live in. I love living here. We chose to live here. We raised our son here. The arts, the tourism, where we live by the sea. We need to do. We know we need to do more with our cleaning up our coastal waters. But the wide range and diversity is wonderful. Television, it was mentioned. We moved here. My wife was a TV producer. She was a producer on Doctor Who, so we all know about the arts and what that does. And most of all, for me, it's the tolerance and understanding of that community that makes me prouder than anything.
Thank you very much. And finally, Simon Llewellyn from Reform.
I'm from Cardiff. I mirror what Stephen's saying. I'm very proud of Cardiff. I'm proud of where I've come from. I've lived all around the world, but always come back to Cardiff. I love the place. I remember when it was mud. The docks were mud. The Cardiff was built on the docks, which brought in diversity and various cultures. Those cultures working together, sharing their culture, their food, their experiences. It's just such a magnificent place to go to visit. There's business here, there's tourism here. We've got the stadium. I think the Foo Fighters are in tonight. I think if we can listen, we might be able to hear them. But, you know, it's a great city, but I think we can do more. I really think we could do more by working together, all of us, putting our heads together and listening to the people of Cardiff. What do they want? And let's see if we can work towards that and make it even better than what it is.
Thank you, Simon. That's it then for our questions from you, our listeners. But before we finish, each candidate will now have exactly 1 minute for a closing statement. We begin with Welsh Liberal Democrats candidate Alex Wilson.
Thank you. And I'd like to reiterate what everybody said and thank you, Bro Radio, for inviting us here this evening and giving us the opportunity to talk. We've seen what I call the arrogance of power, and I feel that we need to break that cycle. I feel that Liberal Democrats are the best place to break that cycle. And if I'm voted in as MP, I will fight to break that cycle of arrogance. We're here at the YMCA doing this recording, and it's a wonderful organisation, wonderful volunteers and people at work over a number of years, helping the people in our society who need the help most. The YMCA was built on 4 pillars: community well-being, meaningful work, a sustainable planet, and a just world. And I'll just say that if though we can take a leaf, all of us can take a leaf out of the YMCA's book, and for a better society. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Next up is Wales Green Party candidate Anthony Slaughter.
I'll finish my opening statement, which overran. As I was saying, this was an exciting election for the Wales Green Party. We are standing historically, first time, a full slate across Wales, 32 Welsh Green candidates in 32 Welsh seats, giving everybody in Wales the opportunity to vote for the Green Party, to vote for real hope and real change. And it's an exciting election as well, because we're going to see the Green Party in Westminster is going to at least quadruple its number of MPs next week. You've seen the amazing work one Green MP, the fantastic Caroline Lucas, has done. Imagine what 4 of them are going to achieve. And here in Wales, we are going to get our highest ever vote share across the country, building the way forward to get our first elected Green representation on the Senedd in 2026. And quite often people, we will always say, if you don't vote for what you believe in, you'll never get it. But quite often in previous elections, people feel squeezed. They want to get rid of the cruel Conservative government and they're scared to risk their vote. This election, that isn't the case. The Tories are toast, as I said. Labour are going to be the next government. Stephen is not going to lose his seat. So you can vote with your heart for policies that you believe in. If you're tired of business as usual politics, if you want to vote for real hope, real change, now's the time to turn green.
Anthony. Next we go to Welsh Conservative Party candidate Ellis Smith.
Well, for years, Labour have maintained a stronghold in Cardiff South Penarth. They run the Senedd, and the issues that are important to you are run by Labour already. Education, worst PISA results in the UK. Healthcare, longest NHS waiting lists. All of these are Labour run. Now, Keir Starmer called this his blueprint for government. So if you want all of these things, then by all means, vote Labour. But if you want lower any NHS waiting lists, better education results, then vote Conservative.
Thank you, Ellis. Simon Llewellyn from Reform UK.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for Pro Radio. There's exciting times ahead. If you vote for either the Tories or for Labour, you just change the different colours. They're both one and the same party. The Tories have broken the country, and Labour will bankrupt the country. Now, I watched Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak last night, and a lot of their word and they were saying is we've got to reform this, reform that. I'm running for reform. If you vote for me, we will reform this country, turn it around, listen to you, and have a voice in Parliament for what you really want to see.
Thank you, Simon. And finally, Stephen Doughty from Labour.
Well, thanks to all the questioners and thanks to Bro Radio for hosting this today. I think the people I've been speaking to on the doorstep are actually sick and tired of hearing the Conservative government running Wales down and running down our teachers and our NHS and their hard work and their struggles, because many of them are struggling to get by. They're struggling to get by after the chaos we've seen of the way they've run the economy, of the way they've shortchanged Wales. And what they want is some change. What they want is hope. What they want is professionalism. What they want is stability. What they want is security. And we're offering that. We're offering economic stability and security, security on the streets, security for our country, investment in health and education, investment in green transition and jobs, and bringing down bills, and investment in opportunities for all, whether that's in housing, whether that's in apprenticeships, all of the things that are being raised with me on the doorstep. I think there's a huge opportunity here for Wales and Westminster to be working together, not running down Wales, but instead backing Wales up. and it's very clear to me that the votes haven't been cast yet. Some people are casting their postal votes right now, but the vast majority of people will go to the polls on the 4th of July. So if you want change, you need to vote for it.
Thank you, Stephen, and thank you to each of the candidates for joining us this evening, and for you for submitting questions for us to put to them.
You can watch the entirety of tonight's programme on Bro Radio's social media channels and listen back in full via broradio.fm, where you can find full coverage of 2024 general elections.
Tomorrow night from 7 p.m, you'll be able to hear our second programme, where we'll be putting your questions to the candidates looking for your vote in the Vale of Glamorgan constituency. For now, from me, Rhys Potter, and Megha Roy, good night.